Hey y'all, it's Nissa. Today we're going to be talking about avoiding plagiarism and what things you need to know as a student in an English for Academic Purposes class needs to know about how to protect yourself against plagiarism and the pitfalls of plagiarism and the punishments, furthermore, of plagiarism. And as a graduate student, the things that you need to remember as you're embarking on your academic careers, writing papers, what sorts of things you need to know about giving credit to the sources that you get information from. We're going to be talking about three main things. First, what is plagiarism? Some definitions, just so that we're all on the same page about what it is. Second, why should you care? Other than the fact that your instructors probably always tell you it's bad and you shouldn't do it, why is it so bad and why shouldn't you do it? And what are the cultural perceptions of plagiarism in the United States that further make your instructors want to tell you not to do it? And lastly, how can you protect yourself? What sorts of things do you need to know about citing sources and when to cite sources and when you don't have to? So what is plagiarism? There's a couple different examples here from some textbooks. There are different definitions technically with different words, but ultimately the underlying idea is the same. The first definition, 3 different acts are considered plagiarism. First, failing to cite quotations and borrowed ideas. Second, failing to enclose borrowed language and quotation marks. And 3, failing to put summaries and paraphrases in your own words. The second definition, plagiarism is the unacknowledged use of another person's work in the form of original ideas, strategies, and research, or another person's writing in the form of sentences, paraphrases, and innovative terminology. So whether we're talking about specific sentences that you've copied and pasted, or something as basic as an idea, plagiarism is the same as stealing something from somebody. It's technically stealing intellectual property. It's stealing something that someone has taken the time to write or think up, or an idea that they have, and you're taking it and you're claiming it as your own, either intentionally by not wanting people to know who originally came up with it and wanting to take the credit for yourself, or unintentionally, in where you just happen to mention an idea because you're so excited about your topic that you forget, oh, I didn't come up with this. I need to attribute this to the original author. So something important here to remember is that plagiarism can be either intentional, as in you intended to do it, or it can be unintentional, as in you didn't intend to do it. And a teacher may come up to you and say, did you write this? And you say, oh no, I didn't. This is something that you need to be aware of, as you may not intend to plagiarize or borrow or steal the work from somebody else, but hopefully this lecture and discussing plagiarism will make this idea more prevalent in your mind as something that you pay attention to when you put together your papers. And further, why should you care? Other than it's bad, 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 we tell you you shouldn't do it. This is true. But some more official ramifications of plagiarism include punishments from the University of Illinois Student Code. These things are not empty threats. These things have happened to students who have either unintentionally or intentionally plagiarized. Both types get punished, so it's definitely something to be aware of. Some potential punishments include a reduced or failing grade for the assignment, or a reduced or failing grade for the course. If it's maybe a smaller piece of plagiarism, maybe you didn't intend to do it, the instructor might just fail the assignment. Or if you have taken an entire paper maybe from somewhere else, maybe the instructor will fail you in the course. Can also result in suspension or expulsion from the university, meaning you're asked to leave the university and not return. Can result in denial of credit for the course. So even though you've taken the course, the plagiarism may be so bad as to where they won't let you have credit for the work that you've done. And also a written warning or notice may be put into your student file, which will stay with you for the duration of your tenure as a student at whatever university you're at. And in fact, if you continue on to another university, that file may go with you with those notes in it. So just some things to keep in mind. Other than the official punishments for plagiarism, there are also some other pitfalls of plagiarism that have to do with your reputation and how people see you in your community. This includes reduced credibility. So as a writer, you want your work relies on your reader trusting you as a writer. You want them to believe the things that you're saying. You want them to think that, oh, if they read what you've written, it must be true, or it must be valid. And if they see that you've plagiarized, or it becomes known that this particular writer plagiarizes, it's very unlikely that readers will trust that writer again, and that's something that's very difficult to get back. Another thing is a tarnished reputation. Is your reputation as a writer, as an academician, as a researcher. You only get one of those. And once you've tarnished it, once you've harmed it, once you've colored it poorly in some way, it's really difficult to get rid of that negative light and to restore yourself in the minds of the members of your community. So other than just, oh, well, I'm not in school anymore, I don't need to worry about what the university would or wouldn't do, well, you need to worry about your reputation and how people see you in your community. Is if you want to continue to rise in your community, be an active researcher, have the respect of your peers, plagiarism is definitely something you do not want to do in the United States. So how can you protect yourself? One of the most basic ways of protecting yourself is learning what needs to be cited and what doesn't. For example, what doesn't need to be cited is common knowledge. Knowledge that you could ask any number of people in a particular community. You could ask them a question and they would all know the answer. For example, the world is round. Most people know this. You don't need to go and search out a particular source who says the world is round in an academic paper, because this is general knowledge. This is something that most people already know. Another example of this, America's Independence Day is celebrated on the 4th of July. This is another thing that most people know. You don't need to go and look in a history book to find out why we celebrate the July the 4th. Granted, some people may not know this off the top of their head, but this isn't something that we need to go and find a source that says this specifically. Because it's an historical event, this is something that is generally known among the general population within the community. The sky is blue. If you look up and it's a nice day, you're probably going to see blue. Again, not something that we need an official source to say. We can all probably know this off the top of our heads. The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. Again, another historical fact, but not necessarily something that all people know off the top of their heads, but because this is something that happened in history, something that is generally known, we don't need to find someone specific to say, according to so-and-so, the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. We can just assume that our reader will trust that this is common knowledge, and we don't need to cite that. But what does need to be cited is anything else that you borrow or read from another source. So from a particular source, if you read a book or you read an article and a particular source has a thought or an idea or makes a claim, even if they haven't made results or come to a conclusive finding, if they have any kind of an idea or any kind of a thought, that is something that you need to cite. According to so-and-so, they said this. According to Professor so-and-so, they said this. For example, here, according to universetoday.com, the Earth's diameter is 12,742 kilometers. So we probably wouldn't be able to walk up to anyone off the street and ask them, hey, so what's the Earth's diameter? They're probably not going to know. But if you find a source, maybe universetoday.com or the encyclopedia or any kind of other scientific publication that would have this information, you would want to cite this because this is something that someone took the time to figure out, took the time to measure. This isn't something that you could just assume off the top of your head just by being in the community. You wouldn't just know this. You wouldn't just happen to know this. Another example, according to ScienceMadeSimple.com, the Earth is blue due to Rayleigh scattering. So this is something I read on this website. This isn't something that I knew off the top of my head, and I doubt that most of you knew this off the top of your head. But this is, again, something very specific that's attributable to a source because this source makes this claim that this is why the sky is blue. And lastly, according to Steve Brown, American historian, America declared its independence from Britain in part due to taxation without representation. So again, this is not something that everybody necessarily thinks or knows, but something that this particular source has said, as is indicated by the quotation marks that I put the sentence in. This is explicitly what the source said, exactly the same wording that the source used, and I want to show that I got this information from another source, that this is not something that I as the writer am saying, but rather this is something that I as the writer am borrowing from this other source.